lot of people do not realize this, but there is a huge difference between getting strong now and waiting until life forces you to care about it later. Because it is significantly easier to have never declined in the first place rather than trying to build back up after you have already declined. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how this plays out across your life from start to finish.
My name is Jonathan Orlando, and I created the Fitness Academy to help people like her, him, her, and you to be completely independent in the gym for the rest of your life. So make sure to subscribe so you can learn how to be just like them.
In this graph, the green line represents someone who stops exercising after the age of 25, and the blue line represents someone who continues exercising after the age of 25. And then we have the red line across the bottom, which is for the minimum threshold for independence. So this is basically the minimum amount of physical ability needed to maintain independence with everyday activities. Left side is your overall physical ability, and then the bottom is the age. Now, of course, everyone is different. People respond differently to exercise, age differently, and life is never perfectly controlled. So for the sake of this example, let's just imagine we have two perfectly cloned versions of the same person. Same genetics, same starting point, same life. The only difference is one continues exercising and the other stops. So we'll see exactly how the two end up comparing. Also, this graph is a more basic version because we're not adding in any type of life events yet. We're just looking at the general concept first. Then we'll talk about what happens when life starts throwing a bunch of wrenches into our plan. So both people exercise until they're 25, and after that, they go in different directions. The blue line keeps going because that person keeps exercising. They continue building their physical ability until things eventually level off, like they always do. And then over time, there's a slower decline on the way down as you get older and things just become harder regardless. Now, if we look at the green line, we can see that they start out the same because they exercised up until 25, but then their peak ends up being where they were at when they were 25. So things basically stay the same until they start declining. And this is the first important part. And then from there, things start slowly to decline sooner than the blue line because they just aren't doing anything overall. And if you are not exercising, the only possible direction for your physical ability to go over time is down. It's not going to magically go up when you're not doing anything about it. And it certainly isn't going to just stay the same forever. The only direction it can go if you aren't actively exercising is down. Now, at first, the decline of the green line is not that fast. It is pretty low, to the point where a lot of people may not even notice much of a difference, especially if they live a relatively sedentary lifestyle and they don't necessarily do anything that's actually challenging. You probably won't even notice the difference until you get into your 50s or so. But eventually, that decline starts accelerating as you get older and older. And when it starts accelerating is exactly when people really start to notice the difference. Now we see the green line dip towards that minimum threshold that we were just talking about because that person still has not done anything to stop it. Meanwhile, the blue line, even though they're also declining, still stays significantly above that minimum threshold. They literally won't have any issues with any daily tasks because they spent their whole life exercising. And not only that, the blue line extends farther to the right than the green line because it's far more likely that that person's just going to live longer. Not only are they going to live longer, potentially, but they're also way more likely to actually enjoy their life at that age because they can actually do all the things that they want to do. They're not limited by a lack of strength. They're not limited by being unable to get off the floor by themselves or climb stairs or walk around for really long periods of time. They can do all the things they want to do in life, even at an older age. And that right there is already a really huge point. Now, some of you might be wondering, what happens if the green line person starts to exercise when they start noticing that decline. So let's just say at age 65, right around here, is when they finally start to decide to do something about their physical ability declining, or in this case, plummeting. Now, obviously, doing some exercise, even at this point, is still way better than doing absolutely nothing. They can absolutely improve. They may even be able to get well above this line and kind of live the rest of their life in a relatively fine fashion. But because they started so late, staying above that line, or getting above that line and staying there, is just much, much harder. And this is one of the most important points in this whole video. It is way easier to never decline in the first place than it is to build back up after you have already declined. This is something that I'm going to say at least 2 or 3 more times in this video because it is just that important. If there's only one thing you take away from this video, it is that right there. Way easier to never decline in the first place rather than to build back up after you have already declined. That's already 3 times. And that is the point I really want people to understand. If you wait until you are already declining, you're already on this downward slope before you actually go to do something about it, the journey becomes so much harder. By that point, there's a good chance that if you've accumulated a bunch of different pains, injuries, limitations, bad habits over the years, that makes getting started with fitness and staying consistent with it significantly harder when you're starting at that point already. And I've seen this firsthand working with people who were starting for the first time in their 60s and 70s. It is extremely difficult to build them back up after they have already declined so much. Progress is slower. They often need a lot more help. Sometimes they don't even have the physical ability to set certain exercises up without assistance. Sometimes pain and injuries severely limit what they can even do and what they can even progress with. And that creates a situation where they absolutely need a trainer or a coach just to help them start to make progress in a safe manner. And this is not even getting into the other issue that I talk about a lot in a lot of other videos. And that is a lot of older people who start exercising for the first time, especially completely on their own, do not make things hard enough to actually improve with strength or muscle. They go to the gym, they're consistent, they do the things, but it's never challenging enough to actually make any kind of difference. And the thing is, it's not necessarily their fault. It's more so because they don't have any real reference point or perspective as to what challenging is supposed to feel like, especially if they spent the last decades avoiding any kind of challenging effort or any kind of resistance their entire lives. So naturally, they become much more apprehensive about doing anything that is remotely difficult. And the thing with exercise is that it does need to be challenging. You need to actually have some difficulty in your workouts. Now, that doesn't mean it needs to be impossible or brutal or you need to crush yourself every time you go to the gym, but at least challenging enough to create the change that we're looking for. So in this second graph, it kind of starts the same way, where both our people are exercising up until the age of 25. Then one continues and one stops. But this time, life throws a wrench into that plan like it normally does. And let's say both of these people at around age 35 or 36 both go through the same exact catastrophic injury. Maybe it's some type of bad car accident that seriously messes up their knee. Same injury, same timing, same person. And what we can see on the graph is that we have a straight line down to the bottom because an injury like that is absolutely going to plummet your physical ability and your ability to be independent. But the big difference is what happens next. The blue person comes back significantly faster and significantly higher than the green person. And we can see that right here. And you may be wondering, why is there such a big difference between those 2 points? And there's 2 main reasons. The first reason, if you have built strength and muscle over your life and then you get hurt or have a catastrophic injury like this, you have a much bigger base to fall back on. It's easier to rebuild, it's easier to regain what you lost, it's easier to get close to where you were before because you already have all that stuff kind of established. And the important point is, you don't need to get all the way back to your peak. You just need to get high enough to stay well above that minimum threshold for independence. But that's only one part. The second reason is more important. Because, again, like we said in the beginning, in our example, both people were exercising consistently up until the age of 25. So the green line guy still has some muscle and strength to fall back on. But there's one big difference. The green line person spent the last 10 plus years doing absolutely nothing, staying exactly the same. So not only is their foundation significantly lower than the blue line person, but more importantly, they do not have the habit of exercising consistently anymore. They spent the last decade plus not doing anything. So instead of establishing the habit of exercising consistently, like our blue line person, they've spent the last 10 years developing the habit of not exercising. And that is what makes the biggest difference overall. Because when both of these people go through physical therapy, the blue line person is far more likely to take it seriously. And not only that, continue doing the work after the formal PT ends. Because the blue line person has spent their entire life building the habit of showing up, exercising, and doing what they need to do. Whereas the green line person is far more likely to stop any type of physical activity, stop any type of exercising as soon as formal physical therapy ends. And this matters a lot because physical therapy is set up to get you back to that minimum independence threshold so you can do daily activities again with hopefully not too much difficulty. It is not set up to take you far beyond that point. And the thing is, it's not like it's the physical therapist's fault. It's more so because insurance typically doesn't give you enough time to develop that level of strength, that level of habits to continue doing it by yourself. You just don't have enough time. Their hands are tied to a certain extent because of the whole insurance process, unless you're someone that's willing to pay out of pocket and continue getting help for as long as you need it. So unless you take it upon yourself to keep building after PT ends, you are probably going to just hover around that minimum threshold, and that is exactly what we see here in the graph. And that is the main reason why there is such a big difference between the blue and green line in this example. This is a huge benefit that you get from exercising that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about too much. It makes such a big difference how life plays out after some type of catastrophic injury like this. Now, if we move further down the graph, the blue line person returns to a similar pattern that we saw in the first graph. They kind of level out for a little bit and then slowly decline as they continue to get older. Whereas, like we were just talking about, the green line person tends to just hover around that minimum threshold. And what often happens in real life is this. Someone who does not exercise, gets hurt, goes to physical therapy, improves a little, like we see right here, gets back to that minimum threshold, then slowly declines again because maybe the old injury starts bothering them again. Maybe another issue pops up. Maybe they re-injure themselves. And they'll constantly have this up and down of getting better, getting worse, seeing someone else, a different specialist, maybe a chiropractor this time, things get better, and then comes back down, and then maybe they decide now's finally the time to get that knee replacement surgery or something like that, and again, things get better, but then ultimately, because they refuse to actually do the one thing that they need to do, which is to build back their strength, they're ultimately going to either stay at this line or plummet below it, which is what usually happens in a lot of cases. And it's not because nothing can help them, but because they never addressed the main thing they needed to do all along, which was build themselves back up physically. And the only way you can do that is through strength training, exercising, and so on. So the green line person ends up struggling with the consequences of that injury for the rest of their life. Whereas the blue person may still have setbacks too. Maybe their injury acts up sometimes as well. Maybe things are never exactly the same as they were before that injury, but they're still way better off than the version of themselves that never kept exercising. Even if they never get back to where they were before the injury, they are still well above the threshold for independence and function. Now let's move on to the third graph. This one is going to be a bit more realistic because a lot of times life doesn't just throw one huge thing at you. It's usually a lot of smaller things that compile over time. All right, so now on to the third graph here. This one you can see is blank because we're going to kind of fill it in as we go. So again, in this example, the green line is the one that stops exercising. The blue line is the one that continues exercising. So we're going to take a look at an example of how life will play out for the person that does not exercise or that stops exercising. So again, the green line makes some steady improvements until they're around 25 when they decide that they're done with exercising. They've done enough, apparently. But what ends up happening is that maybe they have a series of smaller injuries that take them down. They'll build back up naturally because your body is really good at recovering. But then something else happens and we go back down again, and then we'll come up a little bit. Maybe things stay the same for a little while, and then another big injury or pain develops. We take another hit down and then come back up again, and then maybe stays the same for a little while longer, then another big injury, and then at this point we also just have the natural degradation of your physical ability. So then this line starts to become steeper and steeper, and it becomes harder and harder to build back up, and then we just have this sort of pattern where we're constantly seesawing our way down to rock bottom. And this is far more typical of what someone usually experiences. They have just a life of small little things that happen here, happen there. We get some type of pain or injury. Our abilities reduce. We never get back to where we were before again. Then the next thing happens, goes down again and again and again and again, until suddenly they realize that they can't do the things they used to do. They can't get up off the floor. They can't pick their kids or grandkids up. They can't go on the vacations that they've spent their entire life being able to afford because they don't have the physical ability to actually do it, to actually participate in the way that they would like to. And I'm sure for a lot of people out there, this exact timeline is extremely familiar. Now, let's apply the same type of events to the person that exercises consistently. So, same exact idea. The blue line person exercises consistently up to the age of 25, and then they continue exercising like you should. And they're still going up. Now, if we apply some of the life events that happen, and we'll start from here. So I'll say our person's going well, then some type of pain or injury happens, they decline, but they're able to not only build back, but continue going up. Because again, it's not a catastrophic injury. Everyone's going to deal with these types of pain and injuries without a doubt. The difference is if you're exercising consistently, not only can we recover really well from those, but we can still continue moving up. So this person comes back up, maybe the next thing happened, another small dip, up again, and then maybe at a certain point, the progress starts to level out. Still, maybe another pain and injury happens over here. They're able to build back up, even if it's not as high as it was before. That's fine. And then again, another injury, and this constant up and down like we saw before until things, as they always do, begin to decline down regardless of what you do, right? So this is the kind of ups and downs that will happen throughout life regardless. So if we take a look and compare the two, we can see that the green line or the blue line person still stays well above. Not only that, but they do a really good job of recovering from every time they had a pain or injury. Even if they aren't able to get fully back to where they were before, it is nowhere near as damaging as it is for this down here, where the person is just steadily declining down, 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 and down. And again, the main reason why the blue line person is able to keep their physical ability relatively high, even through the course of all these different pain and injuries, is because they have the habits established. They have the habits of going to the gym, exercising, getting stronger, building muscle, all of this stuff, because all of this stuff helps you every single time we deal with some type of pain and injury. But there is another reason as well. When we have someone who exercises consistently and they get injured, it typically affects their life significantly less compared to the person that doesn't exercise. So easy way we can kind of think about this, and we'll put numbers to it so it's easier to understand. Let's say the blue line person can deadlift 400 pounds. They can pick 400 pounds off of the ground. And then another person who does not train can only lift maybe around 120 pounds, maybe 150, somewhere around there. If both of them get the same kind of back injury that cuts their ability to lift things in half, the stronger person, the one that still is exercising consistently, can still handle way more even with the pain and injury. So in this example, the person that can lift 400, maybe it drops down to 200 that they can lift without symptoms starting to become an issue. Then the person who could only lift 120 pounds right from the start gets cut in half. So now they can only do 60 before symptoms start preventing them from being able to do it. And this is a massive difference. It makes a huge difference in the recovery process. The stronger person may still be able to do a lot of normal things without much issue. And the reason is because even though their ability to lift stuff was cut in half, so 400 to 200, most things in life don't weigh 200 pounds. Most things you do around the house don't weigh 200 pounds. So the only time they're likely to really have an impact because of their injury is when they're in the gym exercising. And then that's easy to make adjustments so they can still do something. But the other person that can now only lift 60 pounds before symptoms start to get in the way, a lot of things that you would do, you no longer can do because things become too symptomatic with lighter stuff. The person that doesn't exercise may suddenly start to struggle with basic tasks around the house because their threshold is just significantly lower. So the person that exercises consistently can tolerate way more during a period of pain and injury than the person that doesn't exercise whatsoever. That is the main point that I'm trying to get across to you guys. And because it affects them less because they exercise consistently, they are far more likely to stay active during that period of pain and injury. And because they stay more active during that period of pain and injury, they're typically able to recover faster, build back faster, get back what they initially lost from the pain and injury compared to the person that doesn't work out. They go from a sedentary lifestyle, not exercising at all, they get the pain and injury, and then become even more sedentary. They move even less, which just compounds the issues more and more and more, which is why we have this situation right here where we're doing a constant seesaw on the way down. And this is exactly why we can have one 80-year-old person who goes on trips, can get off the floor, can play with their grandkids, can do all the things they want to do, and then another 80-year-old person who can barely walk down the street, can't get up off the floor by themselves, struggles with all the daily tasks. And a lot of people look at that second person and just assume it's because they had a long life of different pain and injuries that are piling up. But that misses the bigger picture. Even with all those injuries, if they had been strength training consistently for years, it would not have affected them as much. They would be able to tolerate significantly more. They would have been able to recover and build back significantly better. And there's a good chance a lot of those injuries may have been completely avoided, because when someone is not exercising and their strength is super low and life puts them in the situation where they need strength in order to do something, that just skyrockets their chance of developing some type of pain and injury. And when someone is older, also lacks strength, they tend to also lack balance. So now falling becomes significantly more likely as well. And that also compounds everything even more and more and more. So this is the main point I want to drive home. Do not wait until you are declining to start getting strong. Do not wait until you cannot get off the floor. Do not wait until stairs become hard. Do not wait until you start losing the ability to do basic things that used to be easy. It is way easier to never decline than it is to build back after you have already declined. Get stronger now so you don't have to fight your way back from rock bottom later on. And to be clear, if you are already older, that does not mean you should just give up. Not even close. The same logic still applies. If you are 65 right now, it is still way better to start at 65 than it is to wait until you're 70. A 65-year-old can absolutely still build strength, still improve, still make progress, still get themselves from a place of dependence to independence. The best time to start is today, regardless of your age, because things will only get harder the longer you wait. And the sooner you learn how to do all of this for yourself, the easier everything becomes. So if you are starting to realize that maybe you really should start strength training now so you don't have to struggle later on, and you want to learn for yourself how to navigate all of this stuff on your own so you don't have to rely on anybody else for the rest of your life, then click the link in the description below and that will take you to the Skills to Independence webinar, where I break down all the skills someone needs to know in order to be completely independent with exercising or strength training forever. And not only that, but we also do a deep dive into the first and most important skill that everyone should know if they're going to work out successfully on their own. Then make sure to check out other videos on the channel where I cover things that you can apply right away to help you down that path towards independence. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos that can also help you down this path. Comment below if you have any questions about getting started, if something feels confusing or overwhelming, or if there's anything that you're kind of worried about with getting started into the gym. So with all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video.